So to wrap up the stream, we're going to be doing part 3 of a series that we started weeks ago, but I never ended up finishing. The War of 1812 series from Drawn of History. Drawn of History is a channel that I've more recently become acquainted with. It's really, really funny. And they're talking about the War of 1812, which is a whole lot of fun. I don't think you need to have seen part 1 and part 2 to appreciate part 3, but it would probably help if you did. It's a really interesting period we're talking about here, though. A lot of this is marketing over matter. Who won the war? Well, Americans are gonna claim in a lot of ways that they won the war. The British are gonna feel like they won the war. The Canadians are gonna be very proud of their performance till the end of time. So yeah, there's a lot going on. No, I don't have a fever. I'm doing fine. I'm just like really itchy. Thanks for checking in though. So the end of the war is fascinating, and by all means, it seems like the British won, but it's so interesting to see how the Americans convinced themselves that they won despite all the bad things we're about to go over. So this should be interessant. Let's get us started.
Previously on Drawn of History.
Hey Dolly, we just declared war on Britain, so the Americans wouldn't have to face the full might of the British military yet. Did we just become best friends?
Yup.
The 1812 invasion of Canada turned out to be a wet fart. Don't give up the ship, boys! Tecumseh, they finally get you. American forces were able to take York, which they burned to the ground. Napoleon had abdicated the throne, freeing Britain to attend to other matters.
So yeah, this is going to be a slightly more powerful version of the British Empire than what we find early in the war. The thing is, when the United States faces the British are never at full power. During the American Revolution, they were being like economically squeezed by debt from the war. And they had the issue of distance. Governing from a distance, which was definitely an obstacle there. And they still have that problem, but their military is a bit more concentrated once they defeat Napoleon. So once Napoleon's done, it becomes a lot easier for the British to focus in on the Americans here. So we're getting a slightly more powerful version of the British Empire here. However, the Americans never end up facing a fully powered up British army. That has never happened.
Thousands of troops, vessels, and equipment, now free from the Peninsular War, were sent from England. Defenses were strengthened along the Canadian border.
Which is exactly where they're going to strike. That's where we should have our men.
What about here, Secretary Armstrong?
Well, I suppose we should leave some defenses in Baltimore.
No, I mean here in Washington, D.C.
Mr. President, I can't honestly think of one reason why they would attack our capital.
Yeah, I think this foreshadow setup is about to pay off. And he was right. By August, British Admiral Cockburn and Major General Ross were traveling up the Chesapeake towards the capital, destroying everything in their wake and freeing thousands of slaves along the way. Where are you going, boy? You can't go joining the Brits. That's un-American. Think of all this country's done for you.
That is one of the big issues. Like, while black people aren't treated wonderfully by the British, whenever there's a conflict between the Americans and the British, they're better off siding with the British. If you have to pick the lesser of two evils in that conflict, I would never blame a black person during this time for picking the British. They were quicker to offer emancipation during the Revolutionary War, so it's definitely something that goes back a little bit. So generally, this would be considered a good thing for them. Yeah, get them.
A hastily assembled militia force at Bladensburg attempted to stop the British ground troops. It was less than effective. and it became clear that the capital was about to be destroyed. Who could have seen this coming? Madison and other government officials had already fled Washington.
There is the issue of anytime you speak to a Canadian on this, when they talk about the burning of U.S. Capitol, they'll always bring up, well, the U.S. started it. Yeah, they absolutely did start it, as we have learned throughout this whole experience, that the Americans were largely the aggressor in this conflict. The only argument is that a lot of the lead up to it was the British not perfectly respecting American sovereignty, which kind of pushed them to the point where they felt they needed to take action. Even when it got to the point where it felt like there might have still been time to turn back, the pride had already been wounded enough that they felt like they needed to take action. You can't have a fickle European empire giving you like reluctant concessions or whatever that they could just take back next time. It's time to show them what we got. Let's go!
Madison and other government officials had already fled Washington after the Battle of Bladensburg. I think I forgot something. Hey, if you forgot it, it probably wasn't
His wife.
You're right.
Paul, grab this painting. We've got to get out of here.
Ma'am, the frame is bolted into the wall.
So?
Ma'am, it's not even the original. I think you could see the watermark.
Damn it, Paul. Just grab it. We've got to get out of here.
Paul Jennings, go grab.
That was, this is a famous Dolly Madison story, and she seems really interesting. Her staying behind, there was kind of a sense of honor where she probably wouldn't have been harmed all that much if she were captured. That would go against any sort of European sense of honor during the wars. This painting story, though, this is really interesting. I think they cut it out of the frame itself. I don't think they cut pieces of the wall. They like just cut around it and took it out. I guess they just didn't want the painting of George Washington to fall into British hands. Like that would be the injury to their national pride, not all the other stuff that's gonna happen, like the burning of the actual Capitol. Yeah, little things the Americans turn into these great stories or myths that elevate the country during this conflict. They're everywhere. We find little things. That's why I'm saying marketing over matter. It doesn't matter what really happened. All that matters is how people felt about it.
Grab that painting, I'll take all the credit for it. You could just look it on your back the whole time. Grab your own painting. Soon, the whole city was on the run, including government clerk Stephen Pleasanton, who had been tasked with saving important documents and along the way ran into Secretary Armstrong.
What do you have there? The Articles of Confederation, the Constitution. Are you stealing the Declaration of Independence?
Of course not. Who do I look like?
Alarmists, the whole lot of them. Nah, these Brits are just posturing. Washington will never be the real target. This is fine.
It wasn't fine. The British Army first burned down the Capitol building and then set fire to the White House. But not before it was looted and General Ross pocketed Madison's love letters to Dolly. Speaking of Ross, why would you do that? Well, that makes sense. Ironically, the Capitol might have already been doomed because just then, a freak hurricane hit D.C., spawning off a weather phenomenon unfamiliar to most Brits. What in the bloody hell is that? It's a tornado. What's a tornado? Finger of God. Meanwhile,
like tornadoes, that was still like kind of a crazy thing to happen there. Like I've never seen a tornado in person in my life. It is remarkable luck. And another thing that we add to our the myth of America, like while a lot of these things aren't myths themselves, they're used to kind of like arbitrarily elevate the importance of America in relation to the conflict. It's weird.
While the economy had been in the tank all war long due to the British blockade, and throughout 1814, New England Federalists against the war in the first place kept meeting in the Hartford Convention. This war has been a mistake from the beginning, and these
I'm just to see.
are killing us. Mr. Madison's war is a travesty. We should have amendments requiring 2/3 majority to declare war, a one-term presidential limit, and a rule stating that consecutive presidents can't be from the same state. Yeah, and if
That's
New
interesting.
England should secede and start...
Oh, consecutive presidents can't be from the same state. That's an interesting idea because Virginia just dominates the first handful of presidents. We have Washington, then we have Adams, who's from Massachusetts, but then we have Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and freaking James Monroe, who are all from Virginia, and they're gonna dominate for like the longest time. So I can see why they might be a little ticked off about it. And then we're gonna end up getting John Quincy Adams, who's also from Massachusetts. So the first 6 presidents are from 2 places.
its own country. We could make Tom Brady dictator for life. Yeah, the secession part of the Hartford Convention tends to be overstated. I mean, come on, what region would really be dumb enough to try to secede? Anyway, the Americans were not in a position of power as peace talks got underway in Ghent, Belgium. We want an Indian barrier state.
No.
Yes, we want an Indian barrier state from Ohio to Wisconsin. And we want Maine.
Maine is off the table. The Treaty of Paris specifically says it's ours. Now, if this is the level of negotiation we can expect, I'd rather go swim naked in Scheldt River. Honestly, I've been looking forward to it.
He does that.
Found letting my little Quincy take a little rinsey is quite restorative.
They're just in there working on the Treaty of Ghent. They said they'd call me in when they needed me. I'm here for the Berlin Conference. They said the same thing. But September of 1850...
Oh, that's tragic.
With an additional 18,000 troops.
Yeah, no matter who won this war, we just have to remember the Native Americans lost.
Now in Canada, the British attempted to invade New York, but were turned back at Lake Champlain. Concurrently, the forces that had just raised Washington, D.C. were about to lay waste to Baltimore.
See? I told you.
U.S. Major General Sam Smith led militias to hold off invading troops, and had Baltimore ships sunk to cut off access to the harbor.
What? What the fuck?
But if the British brought the overlooking Fort McHenry into submission, the city
It's kind of hilarious.
fall. And as the bombardment began, lawyer Francis Scott Key was aboard the nearby HMS Tonnant, attempting to secure a prisoner release. So is this where we're gonna discuss the release? Honestly, there's no need to lock the door. Oh. Dr. Beans, I'm here to negotiate your release.
Yeah, you're doing one hell of a job.
On September 13th, aboard the Tonnant, Key watched the attack on Fort McHenry through the day and long into the night. He peered into the darkness, illuminated only by rockets' red glare, and looked
the
for the
bombs.
flag that flew atop the fort.
So we're talking about the this war spawned the Star Spangled Banner, the song, and it's not even that good of a song. Why does everybody make such a big deal out of it? I don't know.
And looked for the flag that flew atop the fort.
But it's another one of those moments. Really, it's not that significant. But like symbolically, it became bigger than it was in reality.
And come morning, the flag was still there. The British released Key and the prisoners and withdrew from Baltimore. Francis Scott Key, brimming with patriotism, quickly jotted down the verses that would become Defense of Fort McHenry. I gotta tell you, Francis, it's a great name, but it stinks. You should call it the Star Spangled Banner. John, as a militia leader and my wife's brother-in-law, I respect your opinion, but... And why is it a poem? It should be a song. You should put it to music. I can't write music. Then just steal a song. Pick one that gets the crowd going.
That did happen.
I already did. Tell me what you think.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light was so proudly we held out the twilight's last gleaming hand.
Yeah, let's keep looking.
Okay,
At Lake Champlain,
if this stream wasn't claimed already, it just has been.
Baltimore evened out the score a little, and both sides were now looking to just be done with the war.
So we'll pull back any forces we have left in Canada, but you'll need to get rid of the orders in council and stop impressing men.
Orders in council were repealed before the war even started, and with no Napoleon, there's no need for impressment, so whatever. About that Indian buffer state.
No dice. That stays ours. And Maine, too.
Whatever. Are we done? I have concert tickets.
Really? To what?
the concert of Europe. Anyway, we're done here. Status quo antebellum. What's that mean?
It means as existed before the war. Nothing changes. It's like a tie, which feels weird. A tie in war is like a tie in baseball. It's like...
And really, it doesn't matter that much who won or not. What matters is, like, what happens now. At this point, nobody really gained much. Some was, of course, lost. Plenty was burnt in the many burnings of things that got burnt in this war. But overall, it wasn't a game-changing conflict. In a lot of ways, it simply enabled the future. That was probably going to happen regardless. Really, it's kind of unremarkable. It's so strange. Like, I don't even know how to make this sound more interesting. But really, the War of 1812, a lot of people don't pay very close attention to it in the United States. Not because it's, like, embarrassing or anything. I think the Canadians think that we're embarrassed by it. Not really. It's just not the most exciting of conflicts in general. Like, we pay a lot of attention to things like Vietnam, and that's considered a huge embarrassment. So I don't think it's like I don't think it's just because, like, we didn't clearly win. I think it's just the nature of this resolution is just a bit unsatisfying.
Kissing your sister.
Hey, I could be into that. And with that, the War of 1812 had finally drawn to a close. Only it didn't. See, Parliament needed to approve the treaty, which they...
Oh, I forgot about Andrew Jackson. Oh my God. It felt like such a natural end that we... Okay, here we go.
Congress would only get it in February. Until then, it appeared that the war was still on. And remember those British forces that failed at Baltimore? Well, they headed down south to Louisiana and made their way to New Orleans, where one ornery son of a bitch named Andrew Jackson was waiting for them. Ever since being slashed with a sword by a redcoat as a boy, Jackson hated nothing more than the British. Well, maybe the Spanish, or the Indians, or the National Bank. Okay, he hated a lot of things, but in 1815, his hate was focused on the British. To prepare, he placed New Orleans under martial law and recruited everyone he could. And when the British arrived on January 8th, 1815, he gave the command. Americans! Assemble. The Americans pummeled the British, which really didn't matter. The treaty was ratified as is.
So the story here is that the war ends and word is being sent to Andrew Jackson. There's two versions of this story. There's the he didn't get the message version of the story, where he didn't get the message in time and this just happened anyway. And there's another version of the story where he got the message and chose to ignore it and pretend that he didn't get it in time and went ahead with his attack anyway. I like to believe it's the latter because it feels so very in character of him, but you know, there's it's very likely he didn't know, but also it's possible he did know.
Is when it reached Washington, and now the war was done. No winners, no losers. Unless, of course, you were the Indians. If nobody won the war, the indigenous people of the United States clearly lost. And they would spend the next 100 years watching so much of what they had be ripped away. As for the British, they immediately...
I like that it had the little reservation spots.
Be ripped away. As for the British, they immediately had a Napoleon problem yet again, so they never really had time to reflect on the War of 1812. They will, they promise. They'll have it reviewed by top men. Top men. The Canadians remember this war, and their successful defense continues to be a source of pride. But they're also proud of Nickelback, so whatever. And considering the warm enthusiasm going into it, it should be no surprise that America eventually forgot what actually happened, and instead focused on individual elements like Jackson, Harrison, and that song that's really just about a flag. Eventually, with...
And this conflict determined two future American presidents, basically. We have William Henry Harrison and Andrew Jackson, two military presidents. This is one thing, when America goes to war, a future president is determined through that military action. I don't know if we've had a real military ascent since like Eisenhower. Am I forgetting anybody? I don't think I am. But for a good amount of American history, if there's a war, there's a president that's coming out of that war.
The United States, Great Britain, and Canada, time would heal
Glory and such.
and the nations would find themselves on better terms. Hey, is this seat taken? 13? Whoa, nobody calls me that anymore. I'm the United States of America now. Oh, of course. Well, you look great. Me? I stretch from shore to shore, but you? Hey, we've all put on some provinces. Provinces? Is that like metric for states or something? Oh, good old 13. I just wanted to say sorry for
This is
trying
kind
to
of
make you
amazing.
all those times when we were kids. Thanks. That means a lot. Hey, would you like to dance? As friends. I'd like that. 13? Yes, Canada. Get your hand off my ass.
That's amazing.
Oh, yeah, that's hot. Damn it, Ross, are you reading those Madison letters again? Shut up, Cockburn. It's been a long war. Why don't you do something more productive, like subscribing to Drawn of History? Or
You should do that.
being a Patreon patron like these heroes over here. Anything's better than that.
All right, we're gonna call it there. That was really good, and I think that was a very thoughtful take on the War of 1812. I thought that was really a ton of fun. I love his humor so much. There's nothing about this video that I found like objectionable or anything. I just generally found it to be I think this is the perfect person to take on the War of 1812 in like a comedic fashion. I think just the stars aligned for this to work out. So if you guys enjoyed Drawn of History, I would absolutely like. A lot of 60s and 80s presidents were veterans of the World War II. Yeah, but like I'm thinking presidents who kind of rode off the back of their military experience. We have people who were military veterans, but that's not the reason that they got elected. Like with Andrew Jackson, he was like the hero of New Orleans. That was the reason he got elected. William Henry Harrison, he was the Tippy Canoe and Tyler too. That was literally in his campaign slogan. And then we have people like Zachary Taylor, who has no place in politics, didn't have well-defined political beliefs, but became president because, I don't know, he helped win that war or something. But there are plenty of people who served in the military where it wasn't really their main thing, you know? So Eisenhower may be the last one where it felt like, yeah, General Eisenhower. That's what I think of him as first, as like a military man who went on to be president. I don't know.